So yeah, like I said previously with these pumps, you can often just clean them out and they're as good as new, especially if you've got a genuine VDO one, which this one is. I'll just pop this bottom off. It just situates in there. There wasn't that much crap in it, there was a bit. But that's not normally the problem with these. So I pop that off, and then you just pop the sender off. That just slides up that. So you pop that off, and then you unclip all these little clips, and you just pull the bottom off. And then inside, you usually get a bit of crap inside, but it's not bad, this one. But see this little pickup gauze filter at the bottom? Look at all that crap in there. And then more often than not like that, and what happens is the bottom will get clogged up first, and then the side bit here, they clog up at the bottom first and work their way up, and this one's totally clogged. But what they do is these are usually not as bad as the bottom, so when you've got like a quarter to an half a tank or above, it'll work all right, your pump. But when you get below that, start working really bad and whining, getting air in it. So yeah, you can just pop that off the bottom and then clean them out and put them back together and as good as new. They just clip off the bottom, they do. So yeah, when you take it off, it's just on a little seal there. You just got to give that a really good cleaning. Get a state of that. Pretty bad that, isn't it? But yeah, most of them are like that, you know? The dreaded fuel bug. So I've just cleaned all that out in parts cleaner, done all the bottom gauze and that. Clean that out. You have a little one-way seal in there, which just goes in there, just so that can act as a baffle and keep full of fuel. And it's just that little thing there. So I've got to push that on from inside, put that back together. I've cleaned all that lot out, but I'm going to do it a bit better with brake cleaner. Wait till that dries out. But it's a lot better. I've cleaned all that. It's a lot better than it was, because that was all black. And then that goes at the bottom as well. That's all good. Cleaned out this cylinder, and I've put that little rubber one-way valve back in as well. So that's all good. And give this all a good clean as well. So I'll just put it all back together now. I'll just give the crank a good wash off in the parts cleaner and made sure all the drillings for the oil ways are all nice and clear. It's in a pretty good nick actually. So it's ready for chucking in now. So I'm just trial fitting my ARP main studs and looking at the clearance with the oil pump carrier. So there's the standard one there, which is just a bolt. And obviously when that's bolted down, there's plenty of clearance for that one. But as you can see with the ARP, there's not. So I'm going to have to lose the washer, because there's a washer underneath there as well, which is fine. I can lose that, and then I'll have to trim them down a bit as well. So I'm probably going to have to take about 20mm off the stud. I know they've got the X head in the top, but you don't need to put them in dead tight anyway, and you can get them in finger tight, not a problem. So there's one cut down. It fits absolutely perfect. So you can see, oh, plenty of clearance there. 12 of them cut down. So yeah, like I say, I've got all them ARPs cut down now and waiting. So got the crank there as well. So I think I'll chuck it in. Got the mains and big end bearing shells there and new thrust washers. Like I say, I got the studs in and the nuts. They're all cut down nice. Got my plaster gauge as well. I don't really need to do it on this engine, but I'm going to check the tolerances anyway. So obviously I'll build it with assembly. I've got some assembly lube there as well, and torque it down with a bit of plaster gauge, and then make sure all the tolerances are right. So I think I'll get on with chucking that in there. So I've torqued all them down in 3 different stages and finished off at 60 foot-pound. So it's all nice now and nice and free. So I just gap in the piston rings. Ignore all this oil on here. I've just put it on just to preserve it while it's been stood for a while. So normally, standard piston ring for the top compression one, between 0.3 and 0.4 mil. So I'm going to do it just shy of 0.6 mil, which is roughly what the second one should normally be. So I've gapped that and it's nice. So I'm going to do all the top compression rings at that. And then the second one's just a little bit bigger than standard. So I'll probably just do them at like 0.75 or something like that. So that's number 2, gap nice as well. There's number 3, gap all right. There's number 4 as well. And then number 5. So that's all the top ones gapped up. So I'll do the second compression ones. So I've just got them all there marked up. Like I say, I'm still going to use the original pistons and com rods. And they're in pretty good shape, these. So I'm going to use them, they'll go again. So I'll give them a good cleaning. And then I've put the piston rings on, what I've gapped, and then put the oil rings on as well. So they're all good to go. I've just got my ARP rod bolts. Obviously, they're not the right ones. So that's the original one. And that's an ARP one. So they're quite a bit longer. So when you put them in, you start bottoming out about now. You see them coming through there. So I'm gonna have to take some off them, and then they're all right on the top. Like if we undo that, they are a bit more chunky, a bit more diameter on them, but they're all right. I don't have to reduce that, so they'll go perfect then. After I've just trimmed a bit off the bottom. So I'm going to trim all them down, and then I can chuck the pistons in. I mean, if you look at them very closely, there's a lot more meat on them than the original ones. And like I say, the diameter is bigger, but it still fits. So they should be a lot stronger. And then the threads, the perfect depth. And like I say, if I trim the bottom off, it should work out perfect then. So that's all 10 of them done. So all ARPs are in, fit nice, perfection, mate. And like I say, there's a bit more meat on him, and there's not as much thread, because there the thread goes way up above halfway. So the gaps on the piston rings, you just have top one on one side, and then second compression one 180 degrees on the other side, and then the oil one same again 180 degrees on the other side. All ready for action. Got my piston ring compressor there with my ratchet for it. Got my big end bearing shells to put in when I've chucked the pistons in. Bit of lube for the bores and a bit of lube for the big end bearing shells. Yeah, so that's all the pistons in. I put the caps on, all the bolts in, all the big end bearings, and I've not torqued them down yet, but I've nipped them up, and it turns over all right, nice and easy that, so that's good. Happy days. There you go, all pistons are in there, but loads of lubrication. Happy days, mate. So yeah, just torque them down, and then start building it up. So I ended up finishing them all off at 39 foot-pound, which is a bit much, but it took it all right. So yeah, all pistons are in. Happy days. Got all the oil pump and the cradle and the sump all cleaned up. Took the oil pump on and the cradle on next. Got a new gasket for it underneath there. And I've even got a bolt. A little Loctite on. I'll put a drop of Loctite on as well. Cleaned all the pickup. Got a new sump plug with copper washer. What I had to do to get the original one off. Like I say, I've cleaned all the sump and that. I can't put that on until I do all timing chain on front and that, do the front cover. But yeah, I've got new rear main oil seal and all bottom end gasket kit there anyway. So I just got the rear main seal on as well, but I didn't use the tool because it was all buckled and bad, but it went on all right anyway. Cleaned all the bits and bobs up, so I got the timing chain cover cleaned up. So I just got to chuck a new bottom seal in that first. Cleaned all the chains up and the guides, there's hardly anywhere at all on, well there's nowhere at all on the guide, so they're going back in, and there's nowhere on the chain. So yeah, all good. So yeah, just chuck the chain on. So it's got it timed up to that little mark there on the bottom sprocket, and on the top sprocket, you got that mark there. So you got them two darker links there. So they go in the middle of that, and that's a darker coloured link there as well. And obviously put your oil pump chain on first, and then you should be able to just chuck it on. Obviously I'm working with this upside down, so I've put that at top dead centre already. And that should just go on there like that, and then you can do your pump then, pump sprocket, and get the guides on and everything. Don't forget your new bolt for your sprocket on your oil pump and some thread lock. So throw that one away and put the new one in. Already has a bit of thread lock tape on it, but I like to just put a drop on as well, just in case. You never know. Better safe than sorry, mate. Let's get that nipped up now. There you go, 25 Newton meters on the dot. Only messing. "25 Newton meters on this one, 10 Newton meters on this one, and then it's 45 Newton meters on that 30 milli. I was going to put a zip tie around here just to hold it. So yeah, just round there, so that's nice and sturdy. So when I flip it, it's not going to all drop off. So yeah, that's all on now. So I'm just going to put the oil pickup on, because imagine if you forgot to put that on. Hollow seized engine. So yeah, we'll chuck that on there, and then I can chuck the sump on then. One thing I didn't film, I have had the pump apart, and I just measured all the tolerances and it's all good. It's hardly any wear in it actually. And I've packed it with Vaseline as well, because it just helps prime a lot quicker, you know, when you do a new build. Yeah. That's all the sump on. An old timing chain cover on. Cleaned all the oil cooler and filter housing and the engine mount brackets. I was going to do a funky external oil cooler and an external oil filter, because I was going to tap into these here, put some AN fittings and plumb it. But you know what? I'm just going to keep it simple, you know, because if it end up blowing this block up and I've done a load of work to it, it'll be a load of work again, won't it? So I won't be frightened of pushing it then. So sack it. They're all going on. Got new gasket there and that. Even water pump, I was going to do an electric water pump, but just going to put the standard one on. Keep it simple. So yeah, got all the oil cooler housing and the mounts on. I've just left the spinner a bit loose because obviously I'm going to be plumbing up the turbo a bit different, you know, because obviously I'm having 2 turbos, so I'll probably still use the same banjo feed. Got the bottom pulley on, the harmonic balancer, just going with the standard one, there's nothing up with it. Not willing to pay the big money what them Ross ones are, so that'll do for now. And I've cleaned the alternator up and the water pump. That's all the water pump on, power steering pump and the idlers, and all the oil filter housing, spinny filter, engine mount brackets, and then I put the alternator on the other side as well. I'm still waiting for my head studs for that before I put my head on, so I can't do anything else on the engine. So I might move on to the gearbox, so I might get the sump off that and then start stripping it down, ready to do the little modification to bypass the ECU. So I'll just put it in the air on the strap. Just going to go to drain the oil, but that little plug don't want to undo because it's plastic crap. That just spins round in it, that. So I'm just going to take the whole lot off. Well, there was oil in it, but it's off anyway. Let that drain a bit, and then shift all that, and then let it down and flip it upside down. The oil looked pretty clean when it come out in the sump and that. And like in all these little magnetic collectors, there's no crap in them and nothing bad come out of the filter, because obviously these are a sump and filter all in one, so you have to buy the full lot. And these and the oil are quite expensive for them, but you're best off getting genuine stuff. You know, the ZF oil or the BMW stuff. That's what come out of it. Look at that, mate. I wouldn't drink that stuff, but like I say, it looked pretty clear. So I flipped it upside down in a nice position there. So I'm just going to get all this solenoid carrier off. It's only a load of Torx bolts. It's not all of them, but it's some of them. And then that comes off. Couple of little connectors you've got to unplug carefully. Then you can get all this section here, which undoes with Torx bolts, and I think the ECU's underneath there in the little cradle, which I've got to get out. I noticed that mine's got the vessel in it. Apparently this is called the HISS vessel or something. It's to do with stop-start anyway. It's just a vessel that holds more fluid in it on stop-start vehicles. So I'm told anyway. So I'll have to take that off first. And then these 3 Torx underneath there, which I've got to take off. And then these speed sensor I've got to take off, and a Torx down there which holds a little clip to release the big plastic surround for the multi-plug, and then that comes off, and then I can get all the big Torx on here out, and then it should all lift off then in one unit. So that one's a speed sensor, and this one's a little bracket. You just pull it up, and you can pull that out the side. Just like that. I hope. There she is, mate. The ECU's in there. That was easy, wasn't it? Plunk that over here. Happy days, mate. So I just chucked it in the bottom of the sump there. So yeah, everything looks pretty mint in there. So probably is genuine low mileage. I think it's only done 60,000 miles or something like that. So yeah, there's all that unit there. Like I say, the ECU's in there. So I've got to take all this apart now. Get this over here. So I think there's only 4 or 5 bolts which hold this in from the other side. So if I flip that over, let's have a look. Got one there. It's a smaller one. I'll just go and get another bit. So just razz them out. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then flip it back over again. I think you've got to take this connector off. Should just come off, I think, now that. I hope. Oh, there we go. Sound, mate. There's the ECU there. We're in, mate. So yeah, that's the ECU there in the middle. Just clip this wire off here. And then, there she is. So, I think I've got to get some of these plastic welds off, and then I can get this section off. And then apparently you've got to cut that lid open with a little Dremel, get in there, and you can cut all the little wires from the silicon chip section in the middle to the pins on the outside, and you get a little PCB board which you can solder in. But I might do it the wiring route. We'll see when we get in there anyway. I think I'm just going to chuck this section back in so I can just put the sump back on so it don't get a load of crap in it. Just plug it back in there for the time being. Yeah, so the whole point is I'm using the Turbo Lamic ECU, which is standalone ECU. I want to use that because the other ones which you can get, they rely on the original OEM ECU, and it's like a sort of piggyback, if you like, in between, you know, this and the other ECUs, and then you tune the other ECUs. But I want to do away with the OEM ECU. So all this modification does basically is, where you got all the pins there, which normally go into the ECU, you just, in effect, wire in the pins straight to the solenoids and then the speed sensors. So they go directly through into this plug, and then you go into the standalone ECU. So that's the whole point of it. Yeah, because all these are the connections to each solenoid. They just sort of like, from underneath, they just plug into each solenoid, don't they, here? So yeah, you're just bridging the input to all solenoids. So yeah, when you got it that way up, you better flip it over. So it's that way. And they say the best way is like these little nipples here, plastic welded bits. One there. There's one there, you just feel them raised. And there's one there. So you get a little Dremel and Dremel them flat. A bit awkward to get in there, so use a tiny little bit. And then apparently, once you've done that, you can unclip all this lot. Well, that's the ECU anyway. Nice that, isn't it? Well, at least they can get to both sides of it anyway now. So, most people, they cut the lid off the ECU, pull that off, and then snip all the little tiny wires that are just soldered, well, they're just sort of like spot welded to all the pins on the outside, and then they put a little PCB board you can buy and then just solder it, and it just jumps the pins over. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it where you can flip it over and then you can lever these plastic tabs off, and you can get on that one, you can get all the pins on the outside of the ECU and cut or desolder all them. I'll see when I get in there, and actually take the full ECU out, and then you can jump the wires instead of using a printed circuit board and just solder them to each pin. So I'm going to do it that method. Yeah, so I can get all the pins now. So they look like they're spot welded, so I'll have to cut them all. So I just had my Dremel on it and ground all them. I can just snip them with my little wire cutters now, and then that'll just drop out then. So yeah, I've got my little snips and just snipped all them pins now, so they're all cut. So all I've got to do now is flip it over, and I can just cut these little bits off here, and then that, and that, and it should come through then. So there it is, it's out. Just drops through all the little holes, all the little pins and that. So, ready for action, ready for soldering all the wires now. So I've given all the pins a good tinning with solder. So now I've just got to chop the wires and then solder them all in. Yeah, I'm going to put the bottom back on because it holds it all together then. So that's it, all the wiring done. All jumped over as it should be. So that'll do me. Wasn't too bad to do that actually. I won't be needing that. So I've sealed all that up with some of that. Should be alright, it's good stuff. Used it before on random stuff like this, and it's maybe petrol and oil proof. So I've checked all the pins which go into the output plug, and checked with the diagram, and they're all correct. All the speed sensor, the front one and the rear one, the temperature sensor, and all the solenoids. And then there's a couple which are on this plug here as well, which output to another solenoid. Well, it says two solenoids, but one of them's to the vessel, the HISS expansion vessel. So, but they're all right anyway, so they're all correct. So I'm going to chuck that in. Just notice one sensor on it which they don't use. It's this weird one on the side here, and they don't wire that to anything when you're using the turbo Lamic, so I don't know whether that's like a park sensor or something, I don't know. It's ready for going back together. So yeah, that sensor what was going on about before, it is a park sensor, because there it is on the side there. And then when you plonk this back in, you've got a little magnetic bit, don't know if you can see it there, down there, which comes up and goes past that. So I reckon it is just like a park sensor. When you move that up, it goes next to it. So I don't need that anyway. So I'll get it all chucked back together, I think. So that's it, all back together now. All sumps back on and everything. So I'll flip it over. I can either top it up with oil or pair it up to the engine. So it went alright, that. Not too bad at all, mate. Fancy no one noticing that I did the engine mount bracket upside down. That's better. Right then. So I think the time has come to get the engine on the gearbox. So yeah, I've got the auto flywheel there and the bolts and the spacer. I won't be using this flex plate because I've got this flex plate which will marry up to that stud pattern and it'll go on the BMW torque converter. And then obviously I've got this adapter plate as well. And then the plate which goes on the TD5 engine. So let's start bolting stuff up, I think. Well, that is the first time it's been off that stand in a long time. That's the flywheel on with the spacer and then the flex plate, which is matching the BMW torque converter, all nipped up and that. So I'll get the adapter plate on now. Well, that's an absolutely beautiful fitment, that. Good job, that. Synchro gearboxes. Absolutely perfectly lines up everywhere. And even all the bolt holes are perfect. Just perfect. Really nice job, that. So that's that on. The starter on as well. And I've got the crank sensor in. I've just offered it up to the gearbox. And I'm just going to check the tolerances in between the torque converter and the flex plate. Just measuring everything up. Right, with a straight edge. And then my veneers. So I'm just, my veneer calipers, I'm just going to measure the depth from the bell housing to the face of this torque converter. And also I'm going to measure this. And I've also read on the forums that because this big washer, it might bring these bolt heads out too far, that it might foul the torque converter. So I've got to measure that as well. So I'll get all that measured up before I chuck it together because we don't want that happening. And I don't want to run it without this washer because the flex plate are prone to cracking if you don't have this big washer. So I've had a measure up and then I've worked out I've got a clearance once this is bolted up from the torque converter to the flex plate of 2.5mm, which is bang on that, that's all right. The only thing is, with this little plate on, the inside of these bolts could possibly just catch here, ever so slightly. And that does fit in, you know, the spigot bearing as well. So, I'm not taking that plate off. I want to have that plate on because I know these are prone for cracking if they don't have them plates on. So I am going to be a butcher and I'm going to grind some of the heads of these bolts a little bit lower because I want that on. So once I've done that, I think it's good to go then. So I'll do that, then I'll bolt it up, and then from underneath I'll just double check the tolerances are all right on the torque converter to the flex plate. So I'll ground all the heads down, so that'll give me enough clearance. Like I say, it was only going to catch just on this little inner edge. Well, it probably wasn't, but it was very, very close to this inner edge here. All the rest of the heads of the bolts fit in here perfect. Just to allow for a bit of expansion because they can expand a lot, can't they, torque converters? So I'm going to offer it up again and then make sure it's all right. She's bolted up and I offered it up without tightening it up and it went all up flush dead easy. So there's no forcing involved. Just put a few bolts in around just to hold it in position. I've not nipped them up dead tight, but it has took it up to the bell housing. And then, I don't know if you can see, got the access hole there. There's a torque converter. I'll try and get in shot. I can move it around with my finger. So I'm just going to look further up and see what the spacing is to the torque converter and the flex plate. Well, the flex plate's up there and it's all fitted nice, so I think it's pretty much bang on. So I've got all the bell housing bolts in now and it's all nipped up. So I'm going to flip it over now and then do them torque converter to flex plate bolts. Got it all on its side now, so we can get good access underneath. So I took that rubber bung off the bell housing there on the gearbox. You see the flywheel there, and now you can see the torque converter there, and it's nice and free. You can spin it around, no problem. So what I did do is I've got my feeler gauges, and I just bunched them up until I got the right depth of what the gap is between the flex plate and the torque converter. So I added them all up, and it comes to 2.489 millimeters, and they recommend between a 1/16th and an 1/8 of an inch clearance for these. So that's bang on the money, that. So now I can bolt it together, and also you can push it to the flex plate like that, so it has got that movement. It's nice and free. So I'll chuck all the bolts in now. So I've got all them nipped up now. I put Loctite on them, and that was the best tool to use because it fits in there nice. I just ended up using my strong arm, locking the front piece of wood there, so it worked out all right, that. So that's a little plate on and the bung in the gearbox. Happy days, mate. So I've got it on block and tackle with gearbox on, and I've just rolled the chassis back a bit. So I'm going to chuck it in. Like I say, I'm just going to have to strap it on the back end until I get the transfer box on. I haven't got my cross member on neither yet, so... But I want to get it chucked in anyway. Well, she's in, sort of. Yeah, got it on the front engine mounts anyway. They're bolted down. Sitting all nice, as it should. Got that engine mount on as well there. All bolted on, all tightened up. I've just got a strap underneath because obviously I've got to do the transfer box, rebuild that, put an ATB in it, new bearings, and do the sleeved casing and all that lot. And I've already got the adapter plate, like I say, from Synchro gearboxes, from the LT230 to this. So that's the next job, but I'm happy she's in. About time, innit? Like I say, I'm waiting for the head studs, and then I can do the head then, but it's easier to work on in there anyway. So yeah, buzzing. Happy days, mate. So I think that'll do it for this one, innit? So thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.